Yes. All right, hopefully the folks on Zoom can see the screen, and we're recording for anyone else who's not here. Hi. Hi. So it's good to meet you all. My name is Parag Batavia, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, let's see, a whole bunch of things. My whole process in going through this last year, coming out of knowing nothing about this, some of the things I've learned on the tactical side, some of the things I've experienced on the emotional side, and just some tips. And I really kind of hope to keep this a conversation. So questions are good. This is driving me nuts. What should we do? That's good. But yeah, keep it sort of free flowing. So who am I? Who are we? So my background has nothing to do with performance, the arts, music, anything like that. My background's in tech. I'm a roboticist. I got my PhD at Carnegie Mellon 25 plus years ago. I've been in Pittsburgh ever since. I work on things like driverless cars and sensor processing and AI and things that have nothing to do with music or theater or the arts at all. My wife, on the other hand, owns a performing arts studio. So she's owned it for 20 years, works on, or not works on, but does private lessons and all the instruments and voice, has a musical theater program, an art program, a dance program, puts on usually 5 to 6 shows a year, which is sort of an insane amount of work. Has a couple hundred kids that get an arts education at our studio, and so the immediate question is why did I do this and not her? And the real reason is that she's insanely busy and I'm not. So I sold my company about 8 years ago, so I'm sort of semi-retired at this point. I teach a couple of classes a year at Carnegie Mellon, focusing on robotics and entrepreneurship. I work with an accelerator program here in town to mentor startups and small businesses in the tech space. So I like to spend my time, trying to give back and help other people, work with promising entrepreneurs. And so when my daughter said, "Hey, I want to do this theater thing," my wife and I kind of looked at each other, and she's like, even though she's in this space, she didn't really know the whole application process either because we'd never been through it. So I was like, all right, well, we got to figure it out. So yeah, that's what we did. So basically, the quick timeline is in January 2024. So my oldest daughter, Annika, she was a junior at that point, and had been doing theater most of her life at my wife's studio and school plays, and through the middle school and high school and all of that. And the conversation we would always have with her is, we don't care what you do as long as it's not musical theater, right? So because we're just terrified of this, right? We didn't really know, and so like, okay, and then January 2024, my wife and I are in our bedroom. She walks in. She's not. You can tell something's going on with her. She had just come back from a trip from New York where she'd seen like 4 or 5 shows, and like we're trying to get it out of her. Like, what is going on? And you're all parents. You know what's going through your head at this time. It's going to be something horrible, right? And like something really bad happened, and she's reluctant to tell us. And it turned out that was true. So she says, like, finally, she's like, "I think I want to do theater." And my wife had a better reaction than I did. My reaction was very, "Oh shit." And it lasted for a few days, and it wasn't. I think I did a decent job of hiding it from her, mostly hiding it from her. But I spent days just going, "Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Right? Are we supporting her the rest of our lives? Is she ever going to get a job? Is she ever going to leave home? What is going to?" And I knew nothing about the process at this time, like really nothing. And so then I went through this. All right, look, if you really want to do this, it's only worth doing if you get into a top 10 school. If you're not going to CMU or Michigan or something like that, don't bother doing it, right? That was sort of stage 1 of acceptance. And we went far down the path after that. So my wife, at this point, my wife is still the one who's sort of like, all right, keeping everything calm and going, all right, let's figure this out. And I'm still shock and denial and all of that. So she said, maybe she should do a summer program. So started looking into summer programs. The mistake we made, which ended up, it worked out, but the mistake we made was she applied to one summer program. And for those of you who've done summer programs, applying to one is usually not the best idea. She got lucky. She applied to Penn State summer program. We live here in Pittsburgh, and she got into it. So like, all right, well, okay, go spend 2 weeks at Penn State, do musical theater there. You're going to be working 10, 12 hours a day. If you like it, all right, let's keep talking. If not, no harm, no foul. You spent a couple of weeks of your summer and you got a cool experience. She went there. She loved it. Like, okay, we're doing this for real. Then my wife found this thing called PUA, Pittsburgh Unified, and here we are, right? And so I look at this, I'm like, well, this is kind of, what is this thing? Again, knew nothing about it, trying to understand what PUA is. Didn't really know the audition process, Chicago Unified, any of that stuff yet. And this was a bit of phenomenal luck. We signed her up for PUA. She came here. She did well, got great feedback, good results. Sort of launched the whole process after that. So after that, it's the stuff that now that you're going through, right? All the pre-screens, hoping for all the auditions, all of that. So we went there. We did all of that. In terms of where it came out, she ended up applying to Penn State along with an ungodly number of other programs. Did get into Penn State, and she's now part of the class of 2029 there, and is having a wonderful time. And it turned out to be exactly the right thing for her. So basically, once we got to between the summer program and pre-screens is kind of when I'm like, all right, I've got more time here. I guess I should dive in and figure out what's going on and how all of this works. So that's what we did. So just quick numbers. I think she did, including PUA applications, about 37 applications, 20 plus essays, lots of recordings, an ungodly amount of money on fees, which probably you all know. 4 in-person auditions, 5 at New York, 10 or so at Chicago. Applied to 8 schools through PUA, got the results that, got good results. Got into some programs, didn't get into some programs, kind of exactly what you would expect. But this was like, it never occurred to me. I thought she would be applying to maybe 6, maybe 7 schools. I'd proofread a couple of Common App essays and we'd be done, right? I had no idea what this process was going to entail. So up till now, I assume this is sort of a common experience for all of you, right? I mean, is anyone applying to less than 5 schools? No, not for this trip. No, good. That's wise. Anyone applying to more than 20? Oh, okay. Yeah, and it's not unusual. That would be one of the things I think we learned we didn't necessarily have to do. 15 to 20 is a good number. 30 plus, which we wouldn't have done that many if it wasn't for PUA, and some of those pre-screen acceptances didn't come in, making it just, all right, let's fill out the app and send it in without having to do additional auditions. But yeah. So, see, this was supposed to be an animation. One thing about PUA, this is just an aside, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The callbacks take time. I know Bunny has said this. I know you've probably seen this on the groups. It takes time. So we were here on she auditioned on a Saturday. And then, my wife and I are like 4 in the morning, we wake up, let's see if there's any emails. And there's like 2, and like, oh, okay, 2 is not bad. And then, at that point, we were also told, look, it's going to take a little bit of time, and so just a couple days ago, I went back through her old emails and I just searched callback. These were the dates she got callbacks on, all the way through December 6th, right? So keep this in mind. If you wake up tomorrow or you go home Monday, Tuesday, and your child most likely will have 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 0 is entirely possible callbacks, that is okay. They will come. All of your kids, just by dint of being here, are talented enough to be here and will get callbacks. Whether they get 4 or 5 or 20 or whatever, who knows? But it could take a long time. Do not freak out about it. So let's talk about some tactical things. How many of you have created your big spreadsheet? Okay, good. So I created the big spreadsheet. I was a CEO for 8 years. Organizing lots of information and thinking about conflicting requirements and all of that stuff was a muscle I hadn't exercised in a while, but I knew how to do it. So created the gigantic master spreadsheet, academic requirements, pre-screen requirements, audition, kept note of all audition times and locations, recorded with links every pre-screen recording, every monologue, everything she had done, so we could easily go back to, what did we submit to this school? Oh yeah, that's what we did. And in case you want to see what ours look like, and oops, let's see. And I'm happy to make it available. I created a sanitized version of ours. But yeah, so I left. I obviously deleted everything, but left Penn State in. Penn State, link to the app portal. It is so hard to remember those. So one column which is just the app portal. Whether or not we're using Common App, I'll talk a little bit about that. Whether or not we're going to submit an SAT to it. What we were told, and I think this largely turned out to be true for us, she submitted SATs. I got out of the habit of saying we. She submitted SATs to schools where she was above the top, in the top 75th percentile. And so for a couple, with her scores were good, but for some of the academically most rigorous schools, she wasn't in the top 75%, right? So as long as it was SAT optional in those schools, we didn't submit. And I don't think that changed anything or hurt anything or created any problems. Don't know that it necessarily helped. It probably did with merit scholarships, but that's what it was. The SAT code, whether we submitted it, whether it had score choice, which is you can pick which seating you want to send in versus having to send in all of them. Whether or not we were going to send the FAFSA in, for a variety of reasons, we had to think about whether we want to send the FAFSA into some schools or not. And generally, you're going to want to send it to all of them. The submission status, just to track what we were doing. When and if we had submitted academically, whether we got the academic admit, pre-screen due dates, pre-screen status, right? Whether it was whether we had submitted it, not submitted it, whether it was passed, not passed. In this case for Penn State, because she had done the summer program, she didn't have to submit a pre-screen again. The actual songs and the slating and framing, right? So let's see, we're October 11th. How many of you are done with pre-screens completely for all your schools? Yeah, so the majority of you are not, and that makes sense. We did one round of pre-screens for PUAs, which were really the first pre-screens we did, and then kept iterating on it and tried really hard to get them all submitted before Halloween. So if you haven't heard that, that is a good deadline to target, right, before October 30, because that keeps you, and you're gonna, Leo's gonna come and talk about the whole application process, and you're gonna learn so much more from him on the details of that than you will from me. But October 30 is a good date to keep in mind. And we did all of ours except for a couple, CMU in Michigan and maybe one other by that time. So you're gonna do all kinds of different versions of the same monologue, same song. Another tip I had, if you've got a phone that does good 4K recordings, then use that, do a full frame shot, and then crop it down, right? That way you only have to worry about getting one good take. If you can't get to 4K, you might have to do multiple because it gets really fuzzy as you zoom in or as you zoom in and scale it up. But if you've got a relatively recent phone, it works pretty well. I did buy an external microphone to use for pre-screen. The audio was just better. You don't have to. I mean, most people don't, but that's just what we did. So yeah, we recorded all the songs, monologues, which framing, go through all the details and figure out which framing do you need, waist up, chest up, full body, knees up, all of that. It is a lot of organizational pain. Then obviously the results, did you pass your pre-screen or not? If so, the date of the audition, the location of the audition, when you're expecting a decision, whether or not you got your artistic admit, costs, whether you get an academic scholarship, artistic scholarship, net, and sort of a pros and cons list, right? There is even more stuff you can add to this. I found this to be a pretty good way to keep, sort of a 10,000-foot view of where things were, especially once I started color coding the yeses and nos and all of that. We kept track of scholarships she got before moving that over to the main sheet. Just because I was curious, I kept separate track of all the PUA opportunities. I deleted all the data. The ones in green were the ones we decided to apply to. The ones in red are the ones that she decided to pass on. Audition specifics, once it got time to audition, the school, the date, the location, song monologue descriptions, lengths, whether there's going to be a track or an accompanist, monologues, dance call, any other notes. So again, I'm happy to, this is just, I'll have my email address on here at the end. I'm happy to send a link to this, just a Google Sheet, to anyone who wants it, right? Use it as a starting point, don't use it, it's okay, but it certainly helped me. Sorry. So yeah, how many of you, let's see, it is October 11th. How many of your kids have started their academic applications, especially the ones that require essays? Good. So the essays take time. And the Common App essay, fine, you're going to write that, they're going to do a good job on it. Then there's the supplemental essays. And almost every school Annika applied to had supplemental essays. And that is a major pain. So the essays should be authentic, which means you should not be writing them, right? Don't write their essays. Do not use generative AI. I help my daughter with ideas, reviews, and schedule. One thing just from digging around, we learned, especially the supplemental essays, they follow a theme, right? And these themes tend to be why us? Why do you want to come to this school? Why have you selected this major, musical theater, et cetera? Tell me about how you engage with your community. Tell me about challenges you've overcome. There can be the odd sort of creative, quirky one. What superhero would you like to be for a day or something like that? Talk about any future visions or aspirations you have. Talk about your experience with, perspective on, diversity, equity and inclusion, right? Those tend to be the major topics. And so what we did was we created an essay planner for every supplemental she had. We put the prompt in a Google Doc, assigned it in almost every case to one of these themes. And this is the part that I did help her with, right? And then said, all right, look, we've got 3 or 4 YS essays. Try to figure out the 80% that's going to be common between all of those, write that, then tailor. It's still an inordinate amount of work, right? But it becomes more tractable if you have an 80% core that you can reuse across multiple schools. And at the end of the day, I think you'll hear this from Leo and others, the essays are very secondary to the application, right? There are a couple of schools, Michigan being one of them, NYU another, that really do look at the artistic and academic, Syracuse in mostly equal weight. The vast majority of schools bias towards the artistic over the academic. So the essay should be good enough, but I would not put the time and energy into these essays, except for those few schools that you would, if you were applying sort of academically to a STEM program or, some other liberal arts program. So that's really all I want to say about essays, but yeah. Oh, Common App slots. How many of you think you're going to be in danger of running out of Common App slots? How many of you already run out of them? Okay, yes, you can ask for more. Okay, so this did not used to be a thing. I was able to successfully ask for more. If you want to ask for more, you got to go to their help, fill out the thing. They will ask you why. You say your daughter, your son is applying to musical theater BFA programs. I think they're starting to understand that and get used to hearing that. You do need to tell them which specific additional schools you want to add. You can't just say, give me 3 more blank spots. But if you do that, they will add those schools to your list. So in the end, I think because we burned our Common App slots before we understood that that was even a possibility. Because who's going to apply to 20 schools? So yeah, a lot of schools have non-Common App application. It's a little bit, it's more than a little bit of a pain. It is a pain, but it is worth your time if you're going to be applying to more than 20 schools to use the non-Common App application process for schools that offer it. The number of times I entered her transcript, right, by hand. It was almost to where I'm like, I was going to type it out. I don't need to look at it anymore. It's just part of the process. I'll mention this. I have mentioned this. Those are all the things that I did. I didn't ask her to do any of this stuff. And I'll talk about how we divided up the labor. So yeah, where to help and where to stay out. So I help with calendar management, right? This audition season is going to be the most chaotic thing your kid has ever done. And so asking them, I talked to a few parents who said, yeah, my child managed everything on their own. I just occasionally checked in. And I'm like, phenomenal, good for you. That is not normal. If your child has that, maybe business and entrepreneurship and being a CEO might be a viable track, right? Instead of musical theater, if they can do something like that when they are 17 or 18, My daughter certainly couldn't, and I didn't ask her to or expect her to. So we helped them schedule. We figured out time for recordings, and I was the one who worked with her coaches to make sure that they were all scheduled. Made sure she had time for practicing, made sure she had some time for breaks. I took care of all the travel logistics. Obviously, I'm not going to ask her to book travel. IT support, everyone's going to have a different experience here. Some of you have made kids who are more savvy on computers than you are. My daughter's not one of them. My background is this stuff. She is phenomenal on a phone, believes she knows how to use a computer, but try to get her to organize her files or understand what a folder is, or the notion of different Google accounts versus different Microsoft accounts versus, et cetera. And it's just, I took care of all of that. I took care of all the filming. We were very lucky in our case that my wife owns a studio. So we had a place we could go and do it, and sort of it was, set up correctly for all of that. I certainly would review her essays and offer feedback, but did not write any essays like that. That was just a line I was not, parents. I've talked to parents who are like, yeah, the essays don't really matter. I just wrote them all. Don't do that. This is a thing your child needs to go through, right? It is a, yeah, you can say it's a character building exercise, but it's also, sort of a credibility and an ethical thing, right? And it's really hard to write in the voice of a 17 or 18-year-old boy or girl. So I wasn't going to try. And it also limited how I would edit, because I would look at this and go, well, that's not how I would write. Well, yeah, okay, that's not how I would write it, but this is the way she writes it. So I would look for obvious errors, and I would look for, hey, maybe we want to talk about this here instead of that, and leave it at that. Stay out of the art, unless you are a coach and you live in this world and you have actual credibility. Some of you may. Stay out of the artistic choices, right? The only thing I would have known, that was great, honey. That sounded wonderful. You tell me which take you want to use. And her coaches would also chime in on that. And honestly, I can't hear the difference, right? She would do the same song 6 times in a row. Which one should I pick? I have no idea. They all sound wonderful to me, right? A mistake would have to be really profound for me to be able to sort of identify it. So stay out of that part. I would do the logistics of the coaching. Hey, are you available this time? And look at Annika's schedule. If she's available then, that is it. Don't butt into the coaching relationship. It's something your child needs to own, right? Because they're going to be working with faculty. You are hopefully not going to be contacting their faculty, when they're in college. So it is something they need to own and let them get practice at it, right? If we had an issue where I'll get to that, where she had to make a change in coaching, and we had to deal with it. Obviously, don't write the essays. So the really simple way to break it down is they own the art. You can own the logistics. You don't have to, but I think it's completely okay if you want to own the logistics, and it really does help them. Honestly, I don't think Annika looked. There were a couple times I made her look at the big spreadsheet just so she had some sense of how much work was going on behind the scenes. But I'm not really sure she understood how much work was going on behind the scenes. I mean, there was a short period of time where I spent more time in her Gmail than my own, right? And we'll get to that also. Like when it comes to writing emails, actually, I don't think I have a slide on that, but when it comes to writing emails, do not contact people as you. There were absolutely times when it came to scheduling and logistics related things, I would write emails from her account, short ones, as her, signed as her, but I would still take a quick picture of it. Hey, Annika, I'm going to send this off just so you know, right? So if you see a reply come in on your email, you know what's going on. I did not otherwise, pretend to be her or dive deep into that. It was, you really, really keep a boundary around the logistics. Yeah.
Did you use her school email?
No.
Or did you use her as a separate Gmail?
100%. If for no other reason than you lose the school account after they graduate, right? And I wouldn't have been able to go back and sort of get that timeline of PUA callbacks if it had been her school account. Yeah. Some people recommend setting up a completely separate theater account, which is also, we didn't think of that, and we probably would have done that, AnnikaPlusTheater@gmail.com or something like that. Because that way it's easy, my daughter doesn't really use email, so me having access to her Gmail account wasn't a big deal because there's, other than the occasional spam, there's really no traffic on it. But if your child is someone who uses email a lot, maybe set up a separate one so they can maintain that privacy around, they're 17, 18 years old. They should have that privacy. In Annika's case, it didn't really matter. Coaching. How many of you are working with coaches? How many of you are working with MTCA? Oh, so that may have been a total overlap. How many are not working with coaches outside of MTCA? Okay, okay, all right. So coaching. So most of you know this, right? It can help your child at all stages. School selection, song and monologue selection, performance, the actual performance itself, recording pre-screens, getting prep for the audition, etc. Right? So we did not know about coaching until after PUA. So my daughter had always been working with teachers and coaches in my wife's studio. So she's had vocal lessons since she was like 4, and had, we have a couple of acting coaches. Our real focus is on vocals, but she had some early acting coaching and a little bit of dance as well. But her focus was really on vocals. So we kind of knew we had a gap there. But we didn't know about like the whole coaching thing and industry and how gigantic it is. But after coming to PUA, we figured it out. One thing I've heard from other folks that I kind of have come around to believe is be a little careful about how much coaching your child gets, because there is absolutely the thing that exists of coming off as overcoached. And some kids can be more susceptible to that than others, right? These auditions are insane. Like, they want to see who your child is as an artist. How many 17 and 18-year-olds really have that kind of self-awareness, right? So some of them, are very clear that, look, I'm still figuring it out. Others may know it. And some will come in having been coached as to who they are as an artist. And those folks who are sitting there in the audition on the other side of the table, they're professionals. They can tell when that happens. So you want to guard against that, right? And I think most good coaches know that and know how to avoid that. So, Annika never had an acting coach who told her, this is how you should act this scene. They would work with her to pull out of her how she felt about something, right? And to sort of put her own spin on it. Same for telling a story while singing, all of that stuff. So MTCA, we did never really heard of MTCA until we got to PUA, and we sort of saw this thing. We signed up for the intro, and Leo was busy, so we went with Charlie. We ended up signing up with them. Our personal experience with them was phenomenal. And I'm not here to advertise for MTCA. It was phenomenal. Doesn't mean 100% perfect all the time, but it was a good experience. She did a lot of vocal acting coaching, a lot of acting coaching, a little bit of dance coaching. The dance coaching was primarily to sort of emote while dancing for her pre-screens. She ran into an issue where the first acting coach she was assigned to, she was wonderful and very accomplished. Their personalities and styles just didn't mesh. And this, I'm a teacher, and I work with mostly grad students who are a little bit older, more mature. But it's very much a thing that you can have really good teachers and really good students, and they just don't mesh, especially in a one-on-one setting. So it's going to be important to figure out, is your child meshing with the coach that they're assigned? And it is easy. With MTCA, we had to go back to Charlie and say, look, and I asked Annika to do most of this. She's wonderful. This just isn't working out. I'm having a great time with these two coaches. Do you have somebody who has a similar coaching and personality style as these two on the acting side? And he's like, oh yeah, right away, no problem. And a week later, she had a different coach. We're fairly late in the season because Annika was very nervous about having this conversation. So we're fairly late in the game. So she only had 2 or 3 sessions with the new acting coach, but it worked out. So, yeah, we had a good experience. I will say that the couple of unique things they offer that we did take advantage over their mock auditions. If you have the ability and resources to do one of their mock auditions, it made a measurable difference in her confidence and comfort and the feedback she got. She was able to be squeezed into the last one because, again, we started kind of late. And they have these direct auditions where this seems a little good for them for negotiating this. But it's part of the whole inequity in this process that if you are an MTCA client, you'll get access to maybe 8 to 12, I can't remember the exact number, direct audition opportunities. Like Shenandoah is one of them. You can just go audition for them without worrying about the whole pre-screen process. So we took advantage of that as well. But yeah, I'll talk about the inequity side of this
What do you
too.
think of the direct auditions?
I mean, in terms of what do we think? I think she had a good experience with the auditions. She got a couple of acceptances, some rejections, did not end up going to one of those schools. What do I think of the concept of it?
No, just,
Yeah.
Worth doing.
Is it worth doing? I would say if it's high on your list, it is worth doing, or if the cost is sort of not a material factor and you're already going to be there. Certainly, all the schools they have coming for those auditions are good schools. So it's a personal choice, like all of this stuff. There are no obvious red flags or reasons not to do it. There's no obvious reasons where you have to do it. Whereas with the mock auditions, I would say it is worth making an effort. Cut out coaching, cut out something, if it's an economic issue, cut out something else. It is worth traveling to get the feedback of the mock auditions. Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead and then, yeah.
Obviously, there's a cost associated with using MTC.
Yeah.
What are we talking?
Okay, so they have package. So Leo's speaking here after me, I think, right? But let's see. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes up every year, but when we did it last year, I believe it was on the order of 130 an hour for coaching. It's not trivial, right? And I don't remember the audition costs and things like that. It is all on their website. Sorry?
You're a junior or senior? Senior. You're so late that maybe less.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because right. We started professional coaching maybe 2 weeks after now, right? We're mid to late October. So it did cap our costs because we could only do it for so long. If you're a junior starting this today, oh my gosh. And I still know, I'm not going to share it. I still know exactly how much we spent on this process. It was insane. And I'll talk about the whole equity side of it because I don't like there's things I really don't like about this. But if you have the ability, it is worth exploring coaching. And if you don't, it's okay. Every school said, every coach has said, kids get in all the time who have not, they've never done it before. They're not coached. They're not shepherded through the process. We have some of those in our studio. We live in, anyone here from Pittsburgh? I live up in Cranberry. So we got a lot of kids from Butler coming down. And so the economic area that we're in, right? It's very bimodal. There's sort of, very affluent areas, and then there's very rural, less developed areas. We get kids from all of those. And so my wife has always been very generous with, all right, you can't afford this, let's figure it out. And so the theater community is largely like that. There are plenty of opportunities when you don't have, MTCA does that. If there's legitimate financial issues, they will figure out how to get you some coaching still, usually. There are scholarship programs and things. Ellen, who was here before me, has something called the College Fund, which provides assistance when needed. But you still have to work to get all of that. And that's work other people don't have to do, right? So there's still a fundamental unfairness to all of this. So day of audition tips. I will tell you, this is a do as I say, not as I do, because I had to sort of learn this stuff. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Mention mock auditions. We're a junior.
Yeah.
Junior. She's here on a mock audition. Are you talking about something separate in addition to this mock?
Yeah. So PUA does a mock also, which I think is great. MTCA offers mock auditions. I don't know if they do for juniors or not. I know they have some services actually they have a lot of services for juniors. I just don't know what they are. And again, Leo's going to be here right after me. So he really should be the person he asks. Yeah, specific questions today. So you missed it. Yeah. But again, if you're here as a junior, you're well ahead of the game.
You do in December as well. Yeah.
For juniors.
There are typically opportunities at each of the unifieds.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, day of audition tips. So I was very guilty of this one. How'd it go? What did they say to you? Did they like you? What happened? Right? And just don't do that. Like, this is a thing. If you can internalize and remember, do not do that. All you are doing is adding to their stress. She finally told me stop asking me. And I'm glad, and it was Chicago Unifieds by the time, because she compressed so many auditions in Chicago because it's the biggest of the Unifieds. Halfway through, she was like, I'm done. You just stop asking me. And around the same time, she said, stop coming with me. So I just stayed in my room. I let her go, let her come back. We would do whatever. I would wait for her to start talking, and she always did. I would wait for her to start talking about how it went. I'd be very careful about the questions I asked. It was a learning process, right? And so, Chicago was almost the last set of auditions she did, and we were halfway through it. So maybe for about 20% of her auditions, I behaved like a reasonable dad. And the first 80%, I was that guy. But yeah, give them space. If they want you there for support, wonderful. If they don't want you there for support, just they're not going to get lost. They'll figure it out. My daughter does get lost, but she needs to figure it out. They'll figure out how to get there. And just hands off, right? Obviously, don't talk, and you'll hear this from other people. Don't talk about other kids or parents. You're going to hear all kinds of crazy shit in the hallways. This will go to my "Don't be a theater dad" slide. When you're private in the room, whatever. Annika and I were at lunch one day, and there were 3 faculty, I won't say what school they're from, at a table right next to us. And it should have been obvious we were there for Unifieds, but they didn't care. They were talking about the kids. They were talking about what they heard. It was so unprofessional. They were talking about a dad who spent way too much time emailing them every time their daughter had a new video, every time she put something up on YouTube or Reels or whatever. This dad was emailing, I guess, they were from their daughter's dream school. And so he was constantly contacting, and they talked about her audition at the same time. And her audition was, unfortunately, wasn't great. It didn't, at least not for that school. And so, we sat there, and Monica and I were just sitting there quietly eating, just like absorbing everything, right? And so it's horrible that faculty are doing this. As dads, and moms, we shouldn't be doing this either. And it can be tempting sometimes, because you're going to hear all kinds of stuff, but don't. Do the basics, right? Make sure they eat, drink, take care of themselves. These Unifieds especially are so insanely stressful that it is easy to forget. And when they're nervous, they may not want to do the things they need to do to take care of themselves. This is where I think it's okay to be a little bit forceful and a little bit dad again. It's you're going to eat, you're going to drink, you're going to rest. We'll figure everything else out. Push that a little bit. Walk-ins. I tried to get her to do as many walk-ins as possible, because I was like, look, it's a great way to warm up, but also kind of not, it's sort of ignoring or not recognizing the fact that she's a little burnt out at this point, and even if it was just for a warm-up or just for a practice, didn't want to go through any kind of audition again. So if they seem interested in walk-ins, and the other part of the logistics you can handle, sign them up if they want. Chase around and do the signups. I did that all the time. I was running around all the hotels for one she did want to do. Hey, do you have any walk-in slots? Et cetera, getting her signed up. We become glorified gophers and managers and all of that stuff, and that's part of our job.
There's walk-ins here?
No, not a PUA. This is at so yeah, I'm not explaining the entire audition process, and I know some of you may not be familiar with it. Leo is going to talk right after me about the entire audition process. Pittsburgh Unified Auditions is very different than every other audition Unified. This is a conservatory style audition where you're auditioning in, 40 or 50 schools all at once. The other Unifieds, even though they share the same name, are not cohesive events. They are simply a set of locations and times where a whole bunch of schools decide we're going to come together at that time to listen to your kid audition if they passed a pre-screen and have been invited to audition, so that you don't have to travel to 20 different cities. Yeah. Yeah, emotional survival. Okay. The dreams. How many of your kids have a dream school? You can admit it. It's okay. It's really not unusual. Okay. Try to disabuse them of that if you can. It's hard. Annika would not admit she had a dream school, but she did. So, what do you want? You want a school that aligns with your child's passions. Almost every school you can apply to has successful alumni and wonderful faculty who care about, creating, working professionals who excel at their craft. All of them do. Doesn't mean all schools are the same, but they all sort of have that underlying, we want to create good artists. But yet there's the prestige aspect of it. I want to get into a Michigan or a CMU or something like that. And it's hard. You all know the statistics around this stuff, right? I mean, most of these schools have a lower acceptance rate than any of the Ivies, right? A typical good school will get 2,000 to 4,000 applicants for 10 to 30 spots, and they'll make 20 to 60 offers. So you can do the math there, right? So the fact that your kid doesn't get into, because we know some of the CMU theater folks, and sometimes they'll come and judge some of my wife's auditions and things like that. And so they told us, I remember the exact numbers, but they've said we typically want a cohort in the 20s. We'll make a few more offers than that. We easily see 70 to 100 kids every season who are capable of succeeding and being at CMU. We just can't make that many offers. And so when you get to that, what is the discriminating factor between of those 100 of the 30 who get offers, right? A lot of times it's just luck or how a particular auditioner feels on a particular day, right? Oh, they wore a red shirt. I wish they wore green. I mean, it's so random. This is a random stochastic process. And you have to understand that. And you have to help your kids understand that. And so the whole notion of a dream school, it's soul crushing, right? I mean, I had a dream. A quick aside. I've been in tech my whole life. I applied to MIT, Caltech, and Stanford, got roundly rejected by all three of them, ended up having to go to USC, which today is a top 10 engineering school and a wonderful theater school also. In the 90s, USC stood for the University of Second Choice, right? I mean, it just wasn't a decent anything back then. But I went, but I got opportunities there I would have never gotten at a school where I was a tiny fish in a gigantic pond, right? So for a lot of your kids, being that person in a not top tier name brand school, but soaking in all the opportunities that come along with that will help them in their future career way more than the CMU or Michigan, stamp of approval would. I will say, like a lot of MBA programs, some of the really top tier schools have networks which you become a part of that can and will be helpful. But that's really it, right? So the dream school thing, you want your child to go someplace where they feel supported, they can be challenged. And that is, so many programs. I've talked to parents, I've talked to kids who've turned down CMU for programs that are objectively lesser than CMU, right? Same for Michigan, same in, was it Montclair? I believe it was Montclair. So Montclair, my daughter got in there. She was really, really, excited about the school before she got into Penn State, and met with Ryan Kasperzak, the head of the program, visited, really liked it. They told her that they had a transfer coming in from Michigan, right? Because okay, you're transferring from Michigan SMTD to Montclair. What does that mean? It means no matter how good Michigan was, it wasn't the right fit for that person, and that is okay. So this idea that your child knows right now what their dream program is, I get it, but they don't, right? So the thing you can do is to really help encourage them to keep an open mind about this, and to sort of give them the hard truth that statistically they're not getting into their dream program, just statistically, right? It's not a commentary on your child's talent or ability or any of that. It's just, if you look at any program, any child, there's a 1% to 7% chance they're going to get in. There's a 93 to 99% chance they're not going to get in, right? So where are you going to put your money? So yeah, so it's a hard truth, but that's why you're applying to 20 to 30 programs. I personally firmly believe this, and I still tell my kids this all the time. Success is 90% who you are and 10% where you are. Right? If you're talented and hardworking, you can find a way to succeed wherever you are. And similarly, talent is talent, hard work, and luck. And this is the shitty part of it, right? Because there are plenty of kids. Everyone here, your child is talented if they are here. Hopefully they all work hard. If not, maybe talk to them. But I'm going to assume most of them are hardworking in their craft because they love it. The luck part, who knows? Some of them are going to have it. Some of them are not. I started a company. I know I was good at what I did. I was certainly willing to work hard, but the fact that I sold it and had a good exit and it had a good outcome, I can point to 3 specific instances in my company's history that were pure luck that if not any one of those three hadn't happened, it would have been a completely different outcome, right? And so I know there are people out there who are just as talented as me, just as hardworking as me, did all the same things, but didn't have those dominoes fall in the right direction, right? And so because of that, they had a different outcome. So the luck part matters. And so that's something, especially in this process, where the odds are so stacked against any one school for any one child. You have to talk to them about the sort of randomness of this process so that, they don't internalize every rejection they're because they're gonna get rejections. All right, how not to be a theater dad. I think I was mostly good at this. So don't be obsessive, right? Don't watch the pre-screens 50 times a day looking for a little thing. Oh, you could have done this better. You could have done that better. Don't post on empty parents constantly. Don't read empty parents constantly. We'll talk about that separately. Do not, unless you're professional, correct their acting, singing, dancing, etc. Don't worry about their dream school, right? If they have a dream school, your job is to be realistic about what that means. It is not to be the one who's sitting there going, we got to get you into your dream school. Let me see what I can do to help you get into your dream school. Don't do that. Like it's gonna drive you nuts. It's gonna drive them nuts, and it's most likely not gonna work. Stay humble. Everyone, the sheer volume of people who are into musical theater, right? I mean, and they're all talented. Hey, Leo, they are all talented kids. Your kids are talented. Everyone they're auditioning with, they're all talented, right? So stay humble about it, right? Model gracious behavior, cheer for, and theater kids seem to be wonderful at this in a way that I haven't seen in other disciplines. These kids cheer for each other all the time, and I love that. Raise a good human who is happy when other people succeed, right? Just that's sort of the basics. If you do a good job of that, your kid will do well. Keep perspective. It's their dream. Do not make this your identity, right? That is, I see this. I have to pull I see it in myself occasionally, and I have to pull back from that, right? Because you're going to spend, and you've been spending so much concentrated time with your kid, and that part's wonderful, right? With because it was me doing the majority with Annika, all the traveling we did, New York, Chicago, New York multiple times, getting to spend all that time with her, and then you walk away, and that's okay. So don't make this your identity. Any other advice on how not to be a theater dad from any of you guys? I'm always, I mean, I've seen crazy behavior. How not to go crazy. Speaking of which, lower your expectations for control. You cannot control this process. You should not control your child, right? And I said, this was tough for me because you're sitting here helping them with every aspect of this process, yet it's not your job to control the process. You are the human computer operator, scheduler, gopher, manager, food provider. You are not the person who's you can help point them kind of, but you are not the person driving the bus here. You shouldn't be. If you find yourself obsessing, do everything you can to take a break from it, right? Get off of Accepted, get off of Facebook, take breaks, find other dads to vent to. I mean, I was telling my wife, Bunny asked me if I would do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Maybe there'll be 3 dads there. I was shocked. I didn't know there were this many dads here at PUA. So that's wonderful. There are lots of people here. This is such an insane process that you have to laugh at it, right? So try to find the humor in it. It's a chaotic, crazy process. I'm going to say it again. It's not your identity. Your kid is auditioning. You are not. Whether they succeed or fail or get into a program is certainly not a reflection on them. It's also not a reflection on you. Don't get overconfident about who should get in, because again, there is so much talent out there. The bar is insanely high. So if your kid doesn't get into their dream school, it is okay, because really you should have kind of prevented them from hopefully having that dream school to begin with, and to keep that broad perspective. Trust, everyone says trust the process. Yes. And then everyone asks, but does the process know how much I'm trusting it? And I'm not convinced it does. But auditioners are good and they know what they're doing. So this is an interesting thing that I saw with Annika. She got to know a lot of kids in this process, and she kind of figured out, these kids are kind of like me in sort of artistically, emotionally. These kids are kind of different. And there was a lot of overlap in acceptances, in sort of like these clusters of acceptances. And I don't have any statistics or numbers or anything around this, but sort of anecdotally, she was like, oh yeah, I see why she got into that school. I got into that school. I can see why she got in. I can see why this person didn't, because there are personalities around all of this, and auditioners look for that, right? So the fact that your kid doesn't get into a particular school, it may not be, it has nothing to do with talent. It may just be that sort of, we're looking for a different vibe. That's okay. And again, I think your child will always end up where they're supposed to, and they can and should make the most of every opportunity that they get. Okay, Facebook and MT parents. The good, genuinely helpful people, huge historical knowledge and experience, and they are supportive when things get wrong. They absolutely are. The vast majority are wonderful people. The bad, comparison is a thief of joy, and you're going to see so much comparison. The temptation to get sucked in, like any social media, and your kid's experience will be different than everybody else's. There will be common factors and common aspects. Your kid will have their own unique experience in all of this. The crazy, my kid got into CMU, Michigan, blah, 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 blah. And then we find out later, no, they actually didn't. They're just trolling. This happens on MT parents. Oh, wow, already knew. Okay. Over a bunch of theater dads and moms, results, avoid it during results season. Wrapping up, after they leave, this is tough. The first week was very quiet. Annika was singing around the house continuously, and then we missed that. And then she realized, I'm not warmed up anymore. What's going on? You're not singing around the house 24/7. You'll miss them. The first month, you're going to settle into a new routine. I'll let you read this. Your identity will change. You are a parent. You're still a parent, but what it means to be that parent will change over time. You will have a strong temptation to stay involved through advice, help, and over communication. Wait for them to reach out. I am still working on this. My wife's still working on this. Give them as much space as you can. Final thoughts. It's a brutal process. It is not a zero-sum game. It seems like a zero-sum game. There are lots of talented kids and lots of talented spots and lots of ways to be successful. It is very inequitable. Having resources helps. There are resources out there for people who do not, but you have to work to get them, which adds to an already crazy workload. It's just a reality of the situation. There's all kinds of success. Your kid's going to be annoyed with you way more often than they're not. It's normal. We got to deal with it. And you're going to mess up and you're going to do things incorrectly. And, that's it. And wow. Okay. Right at noon. So I'll take a minute and 5 minutes. But then I want to turn it over to Leo. Yeah.
Question on Penn State. So
Yeah.
some of the schools, you learn about how the casting audition process goes. Grad students get roles, right? I wondered if that played into your.
Not really. I'm gonna let Leo actually answer questions like that. You should stay for his, because he is the sort of application expert, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you about my own personal thing. We didn't really think about that very much.
Okay.
I don't think that's a thing at Penn State.
Someone trying to get in. Okay.
Yeah, focus on getting into the right program, right? That was really it. But yeah, go ahead.
You talked about increasing the number of applications you did based on PUA.
Yeah.
And on callbacks and things like that. Can you just expand on that a little bit? And as in, did you decide to apply to places simply because there was a callback and
Not quite. Well, she did, first of all.
Sure.
She really was yes or no on every application, legitimately. But certainly if the bar was a little lower to apply, she applied to some programs she might not have otherwise if it required everything, pre-screen videos, all of that. But she did, and you saw the chart, you saw the little table with colors, right? There was like six or seven that she applied to and maybe 15 that she didn't. Yeah, and then someone else?
What was your email? You said you were gonna.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Are you really sure that you want to share?
No, it's okay. You'll see my cell phone's not on here, but my email is. And Ellen took almost 7 minutes from me, so I'm gonna take like 3 or 4 of those back, if that's okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you.
And good luck to all of you and your kids. They're gonna do great.
Dads, feel free to stay. This whole next hour and a half is for you.
Yes.
All right, Mom, let's come on in. All right, and
Yeah. Oh, Batavia family. I'll put it up again in 1 second.